Okay, perfect. So the first question that I'd like to ask you guys is if you could just give us a brief discussion of your career path as well as your current role and company.
All right, I guess I'll start off. What's up, guys? Good to see you again. My name's Jeff Santor. I know most of you guys already, though. I just graduated last year from Tech. Currently working at Northrop Grumman Mission Systems in Baltimore, Maryland, as a cell quality engineer right now. I'm part of a Pathways program, so it's a 3-year program where I rotate to a different position each year, and that is where I'm currently at.
I'll jump in, I guess. I'm Jeff Moore. I probably haven't met most of you. I graduated 2013, so a bit ago. I've been working at Boeing since I finished my master's program in 2014. So I've kind of had a few different roles. I started off in industrial engineering, working mostly with their manufacturing program. Did that for about 3 years and then moved into flight controls design for about the next 3 years, working there. And I just moved to a new role about 2 months ago with Autoflight Safety and Certification.
I can go next. My name's Ken Rapko. I graduated in 2019. Pete Berry punched a hole in my ceiling, I'm pretty sure. I see it, Pete.
Never admitted to it.
It's controversial. And I graduated mechanical engineering degree, worked for Lockheed Martin. Since then, I switched in December of 2020 from mechanical to computer science role doing AI and ML. So, yep.
All right, sweet. Thanks for giving us that insight. And one thing I forgot to mention is just a big thank you to all you guys for taking the time out of your day to come here and to answer these questions for us and to give us some of the inside perspectives. And off of that, I'd like to pass it to Sam Mermelstein, who's going to ask the next question.
Yep. So what's one thing you guys know now that you wish you knew before attending an engineering expo or career fair?
All right, I'll start off, I guess. One thing for me personally is just preparing, putting the work in beforehand. It's super important to align yourself and your experiences with the job and company that you want. So going beforehand, knowing what companies you want to talk to and what positions they're hiring for, and trying to look through your experience and say, how can I present this in a way that's favorable to this company and make yourself stand out? So your best experience might not be what they're looking for. You might have to dig into something you did a while ago or something you may not think is super relevant, but you kind of have to do your work and for each company, prepare your pitch to them and say, this is what I've done, that, and this is the reason you should hire me, and this is why I would be an asset to you.
To go along with Jeff, I think being a fraternity guy, I think we probably enjoy like talking to other people more than like the average engineer. So I think I kind of got caught up in putting like soft skills on my resume, and I think it's really important that like you understand that most of these companies, you're just gonna be a resume and a stack, and so you need to have like the technical skills that are gonna like allow you to contribute early on. So I would say even if you go through like a job listing and there's a bunch of skills that you don't have, obviously if it's like a few days before the expo, it's probably too late, but I think putting a few hours into reviewing those skills and even trying to just get like do a few intros on them so that you can put something about them in your resume would help a ton in terms of getting interviews.
Kind of along, I guess, both those. One of the things I guess I noticed a lot when I was doing interviews for Boeing last spring, just how specific at times some of the what they're looking for in a specific position. So kind of understanding that and then tailoring your resume or what your speaking points to that. And kind of along that note, also understanding how they're doing the hiring process. Because I know for Boeing, at least when they at Expo, if they're actually doing interviews and hiring, they're more hiring kind of to a general pool. So they're looking just kind of at an overall good candidate. Whereas then some of the ones that are more, if you're applying to a specific position, then that probably has a hiring manager that's looking at much more specific qualifications. So in that sense, understanding if you're applying to a program versus more of just a position itself.
Hey, Brett, looks like we just got the last alumni. So glad you could join us.
Hey, happy to be here. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, no problem. Glad you can make it. So the first question that we asked is if you could just give a brief description of your career path and what company you're working for right now and what you're doing for them.
Sorry if I'm on mute. Yeah, so my career path, I worked with Leidos, which is a DoD government consulting company. Before that, they were SASC. They've changed names twice. I've been doing what essentially is now a command and control software development. I'm an enterprise lead for that as a solution architect. My career path has been all over the place. So in fact, I first started, been at the same company since I graduated, but I've done a lot of different things in that. So I started just as an analyst and then doing system engineering for process and like efficiencies. They actually then went back to school. They paid for me to get my master's in system engineering. And then from there, we actually my division moved into software development. And we used a lot of the things that I learned in my previous positions and how we do analysis and understanding how to build proper systems to get into building command and control software systems for the government. So we do specialization in Air Force, but in the last 3 years, we've moved into Navy and the Army as well. So that's a kind of a real short list of 15 years.
That is very cool. Thanks for sharing. And another thing that we asked was if you could just give some advice for us as we prepare for the Engineering Expo coming up.
Yeah, so it's been a while for the Engineering Expo. I think one, ask questions, a lot of questions. The more questions you actually ask about the company is better for you because you learn if it's worthwhile for you to go there or what they're working on. It's also important because it helps you stand out. People that just drop off the resume, say I want a job, it kind of loses track. But if you're asking questions, you're actually engaged with those people. They're going to remember who you are. They're going to remember talking to you, and they're going to actually remember when they see your resume later or what you talked about, and they're going to really key off that. So it's hard to always make a kind of not a splash, but essentially a realization when you're doing those, and they're seeing maybe 5 to 100 people. But having that conversation and being engaged with them is going to be really important. It's also going to be very valuable for you because you don't want to go to a company you're not going to enjoy or work that you're not going to like.
Thank you very much. It's very insightful. I'd like to pass stuff to Jason Van Tine to ask the next question for you guys.
Yeah, so what piece of advice about professional networking, like what's one piece of advice about professional networking that you wish you knew while you were still in college?
I would say that networking for your career can happen at any time. It's a 24/7 thing. It's not just at Expo. It's not just in like one of these panels or anything. I know for me, freshman year, I stumbled to Benny's after a party one Saturday night and ran into a guy from GM. Got his card. He said, "Oh, you're a little young for a job at GM, but talk to me when you're a senior." And I actually met him at the virtual expo last year, and he was the guy that did my little like one-on-one Zoom meeting. And that's what I led with, like, hey, like I met you freshman year at Benny's, and that helped me get an interview with them. So always be on the lookout for potential connections because you never know when you might run into one.
I would say also, if you're not happy in your first job, I didn't really like what I was doing at first, but I think as long as you do it respectfully, don't underestimate like cold calling people internally. Like I sent a lot of cold emails internally to get to a team that I thought was interesting. So I guess don't settle if you don't like your first job, and don't immediately like look to change companies, because often, especially defense contracting, there's so much that they do that you could find something that you actually do enjoy.
I'd add to kind of to look early, and I guess also be patient, because both the role I'm in now and the one I had before were ones I kind of found internally to Boeing through people I worked with. And then when they did have an opening and the ability to hire, it was just kind of, they called me and pulled me over without having to apply to any job rec. So it was a much smoother and faster process. But you just kind of, you have to wait for that opportunity to show up, and a lot of times when they do show up, they come and go almost within a few days. So being ready for it when it does come.
Yeah, I'll add just one thing on that, and it's kind of similar points that everyone's made. I'm actually, personally, I think I'm pretty terrible at networking. It's not something that I actively try to force myself to do. I'm not active on LinkedIn. That said, the best networking that I've had, because I'm not very active on the typical networking kind of cycles or sites, is just continuing to do a good job at what I am doing. Even if I don't like the project that I'm on, if I'm going to do a good job, people recognize that, they remember that, they come back to me later and say, that's who I want to work with. I want to bring him onto this project, and that might be a project I'm really excited for. Also, don't discount how weirdly relevant something that is a bad project or something you're not enjoying as much is going to be later in your career. There's been things that I hated. A project I worked for 2 years that was terrible, and then 10 years later, it was like so important that I did it, and so important that I knew it. I was like the key person for the job, and it was actually a really fun project that I loved. All came out of a project that I hated. So it's important to do things and work through them and still do that good job. And the people you meet on those are going to be know who you are and the way you do work, and that's going to be really important for you going forward, because they'll move different companies, but they'll know who you are, and you'll always be able to reach out for those things.
Very cool. At this point, I'm going to pass it off to Dalton to ask the final question before we go into breakout rooms.
What's up, everyone? The last question is there any sort of technology or tool that you use or emerging tool that you use that would be beneficial for us undergraduates to start learning?
I would say coding. One of my coworkers recently told me a few weeks ago that if you're not coding, you're not, moving forward in the world. And my vibrations professor even told me back in my junior year that if a problem can be solved by hand nowadays, it's not a real world problem, and that everything in industry is so complex that you need to use coding to solve these crazy, difficult, scenarios that we engineers deal with. So I definitely recommend MATLAB, Python. Doesn't have to be your whole sole focus of your career, but definitely a good tool to have in your belt as an engineer moving forward.
I think as a general thing, getting to talk with one of us, like I don't want to go into super in detail, but talking with somebody that's actually in the job that you want and seeing what they're using is super important. Speaking from mechanical engineering, because that's really what I came from, I think they did a poor job of teaching GD&T, and I think that's something that a lot of mechanical engineers, it's like #1 thing. So if you're wanting to go into aerospace or mechanical design, you should definitely learn GD&T. But also I'll echo what Santor said about coding is super important as well.
I'd say just kind of the multidisciplinary aspects, because I guess my undergrad was mechanical, and even though flight controls is highly mechanical, I underestimated the amount of electrical and controls aspects that are in there. So really, I guess, pulling in those, and then kind of also as you're getting into the more technological or the newer airplanes, the software aspects that kind of play into the coding, that there's a lot more than just mechanical aspects that you have to understand to really design and help build the final product.
Yeah, so it's hard to give I think reiterating what a lot of other people have said. I don't think there is a tool that is really important for everyone to know, just because it depends on what field you're in. So I do a lot of software, and actually talk to colleges all the time about teaching agile methodology, which isn't a tool. It's a matter of looking at how you do software, which we found a lot of colleges haven't been training on. There's 1,000 different tools to use that though, and to help you do agile methodologies. And that's something there where it's important to be able to bring in a new tool, do the work to learn it, and then go forward, because there's going to be new tools for whatever field you're in, or the tools are going to be upgraded. It is a matter of continuing to learn and continue to invest in what that is. Obviously, I do think software and learning code is really important, because everything has some form of software in it, and it's very valuable for you to know how that's done, at least. Doesn't mean you have to actually go do it. I haven't written a line of code in 10 years, but it's valuable there for that. One other thing I will say too is, I guess never mind, I said it, we're good.
Thank you. That is very insightful, especially with the agile methodology, because I've been looking into that as well with industrial systems engineering. So that's super dope. One thing I wanted to do right before we did the breakout rooms was just open up general questions in case anyone had something on their mind after what was mentioned today.
I was gonna say something about, like, the time I've been looking for a job has been the COVID era. So I've never been to an in-person expo or anything like that. Is there any way, like, do's or don'ts to make you stand out or make you look for that you should watch out for while you're there?
I think the biggest thing I remember that surprised me with Expo when I went was just making sure you have a plan for what you want to do. Because when you walk into the ballroom and it's like you just see booth after booth, and then the lines of people waiting to just talk to the recruiters, that if you don't have a plan, that the 1 hour you may have in between classes, it's just kind of overwhelming. So I definitely say kind of understand where you want to go and what lines you're willing to wait for. Because some of the big names I feel like will have maybe 10, 12 person deep lines the entire time they're there. But then there'll be other booths with smaller names that maybe you can walk and talk to them right away. So just kind of knowing what you want and targeting that straight off.
I would say do your research too. They have a ton of people that are just like, if you're blindly walking up being like, this sounds cool, like tell me about you. And you can do that on their website. I would say definitely come in with like, if you can find a job that you're like, this is the number of the job that I think I would be a good fit for, or something similar, just standing out that way, I think is would be a good thing.
And something else I would say, kind of going off the whole like length of the lines thing, you don't have to always just talk to the big guys all want to work for, but a lot of you, especially underclassmen, have 2 or 3 summers ahead of you for internships. It's, in my experience, been a whole lot easier to get co-ops and internships with some of the smaller names that people don't know, with shorter lines at Expo, that give you fantastic experience to go after those bigger names your senior year when you're ready for them. You know, a lot of these big names, they've got massive applicant pools. They can pick whoever they want. And if you're an underclassman like I was when I was a freshman, I didn't have any engineering experience. So being able to work at some of those smaller companies while I was still in college gave me a big leg up when I was a senior going for full-time jobs.
Yeah, I think all great information. I think the Engineering Expo, I think, can be incredibly overwhelming when you walk in. So it's important to know what you want out of going to Expo. It might just be looking for small companies that exist you've never heard of and figuring out what they do. It might be waiting in the line for the large, but understanding what you want out of it is going to be key for getting what you want out of that. My freshman year, I just went and talked to a bunch of smalls because I didn't know who they were, but I knew, GE and Lockheed Martin and all the big names that were there, versus, small ones that it's easier to talk to someone and learn a little bit more about them than their about us / page on a website.
The other thing I think about too is, I guess if you get told to just apply online, don't necessarily be discouraged by that. Because a lot of the companies now, they have to do those online portals for legal reasons with HR, or they could be, there's a lot of other positions that are available that maybe they're not doing the interviews for on site, but would still be good fits for you. So.
Yeah, good, great point on the online, but it's worth one add is asking them about what kind of roles you should be searching for their website is key. Each company is a little different way they structure the roles. So ask what the keywords of those roles are, because they're going to make you apply online. We do all the time. We have interns that we know we want to hire sometimes, and we still make them reapply for the actual position because it's just the way it's structured. But knowing what you're searching for sometimes helps, because especially some of the big companies have their own terminology of roles and positions that it'd be useful to learn what those are, and recruiters should be able to help you with that.
I would also say take it as a learning experience. Even if a talk doesn't go well with a company, just say, like, what could I do? Like, what are you looking for in a candidate? I remember one time I was at a Google line and I definitely was not fit for any position at Google. And the lady just spent 10 minutes going over my resume. This is what you need here. This is what you need here, X, Y, and Z. And it was actually very important for me going forward, just tweaking my resume and getting, kind of a sense of what these companies are looking for. So don't be discouraged if you get denied. Take it as an opportunity to improve your resume, improve your talking skills, and think about what you need going forward.
That is a lot of fantastic information. Wow. Thank you guys a lot for that. I think that's going to help me prepare a whole lot coming up to the expo. So is there any other questions? That's a great question, Jason, before we do the breakout rooms. All right, word. Well, just give me about 1 to 2 minutes to get those set up, and then we'll get sent out to the rooms.